The alarm blinked in red, 11:43 a.m. Ethan Cole was still lying in bed, wrapped in a crumpled blanket, his phone resting on his chest, casting a pale blue light across his tired face. The screen showed short videos, people laughing, traveling, achieving things he had never even tried. He watched, but felt nothing except a hollow silence. The air in the room was heavy, thick with clothes tossed on the floor, scraps of old notebook paper, and the faint smell of cold coffee. Sunlight slipped through the gaps in the curtains, illuminating dust particles that seemed to float in slow motion. Outside, Silver Creek moved at its usual unhurried pace. People worked, children ran, dogs barked, wind rustled through the trees. The world carried on, indifferent. Inside Ethan, there was nothing. He rolled onto his side, staring at the cracked ceiling. Another wasted day. But it's fine. I'll start tomorrow. The words were almost a mantra, repeated with the same intonation as someone pretending to believe them. But Ethan no longer knew if he truly believed or if he was only deceiving himself. The morning silence was broken by his mother's voice through the slightly open door. "Ethan, it's almost noon. You're going to miss the interview." "I already said I'm not going." He didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Son, you need to break this cycle. You can't live like this forever." Ethan sighed. "Why even try? Work at something I don't even like? End up like Dad?" Linda, his mother, took a deep breath, somehow holding back her own frustration. "He didn't die without trying, Ethan. He lived trying, and that's what makes the difference." The weight of her words hit him like a silent stone. He looked at his phone and for a moment wanted to throw it across the room, but he didn't. He just turned to his side, thinking of his father, Daniel Cole, who had died suddenly, leaving a void time itself couldn't fill. 2 years had passed since the heart attack, 2 years in which life went on, but Ethan hadn't moved. The house felt smaller without his father, laughter diminished, and every room held memories he preferred to ignore. The world outside waited for no one. The old wall clock in the living room ticked 11:45. Each tick seemed to mock him, a reminder that every second wasted was gone forever. Then something different caught Ethan's attention. A moving truck had stopped next door, the old Parker house, empty since summer. An elderly man, leaning on a wooden cane, stepped down slowly. He carried boxes labeled with words that spoke of past lives, books, paintings, memories. Linda glanced briefly. "New neighbor, it seems." Ethan shrugged, trying to mask the curiosity rising inside him. "Probably just came to die in peace, I guess." She shot him a disapproving look. "What a terrible thing to say, Ethan." "I'm just being realistic." But that night was different. The wind rattled the windows, and in the deep silence, Ethan began to hear a strange sound. Tick, tock, tick, tock. A clock from the house next door. The sound seeped through the walls, speaking, "Time waits for no one, never has." He tried to ignore it, closing his eyes, but it persisted. He opened his eyes and looked out the window. The old man's house was lit. He worked by the light of a lamp. On the table, a giant glass hourglass reflected the light in golden hues. The sand fell slowly, hypnotically, grain by grain. He froze. There was something in the object that seemed to breathe, move,
mark every moment he had wasted. A shiver ran down his spine, not from fear, but from awareness. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. He didn't know why, he just felt an impulse. He grabbed a hoodie, laced up his sneakers, and crossed the sidewalk. The old man was waiting, as if he knew Ethan would come. "Good morning, young man." His voice was steady, but tired. "Good morning. Insomnia finally brought you here." Ethan laughed awkwardly. "How did you know?" "Only those who run from time hear its ticking." They introduced themselves. Ethan, Grant, Edward Grant. The handshake was strong, surprisingly firm. "Come in. I have coffee and more stories than one man should carry." The smell of old books, fresh coffee, and polished wood filled Ethan. The old man settled into his armchair and gestured toward the hourglass. "Beautiful, isn't it?" "Yes, looks expensive. Cost more than money. Every grain represents moments I'll never have again." The words hit him like a silent punch. He didn't know why, but he felt something stir inside, a restlessness, an urgency he couldn't ignore. When he returned home, the imaginary ticking followed him. This time, it didn't annoy him. It felt like a call. "Wake up. Time waits for no one. Never has."
Ethan began noticing small changes in himself, imperceptible, almost insignificant, but together forming something new. In the mornings, after his encounter with Mr. Grant, he woke up before noon, not out of discipline or obligation, but out of a quiet curiosity, a need to see if the world still existed while he remained stagnant. Crossing the sidewalk to the old man's house, his heart beat differently, not from fear, but anticipation. Each visit extended a feeling he couldn't name. The old man always welcomed him with a faint smile, a gesture to come in, and the aroma of coffee mingled with old books grew increasingly familiar, almost comforting. "So, young Ethan, what brings you here today?" Grant asked one rainy afternoon, raindrops tapping irregular rhythms on the roof. "I don't know." Ethan sat down, his gaze lost on the hourglass glimmering under the lamp. "I guess I'm trying to understand something." Grant nodded slowly. "Understand what? Time? Life? Or what you've been doing with it?" Ethan laughed nervously, unable to respond. Words seemed too small to express the whirlwind inside him. He looked at the hourglass again. The sand fell with precision that amazed him. Each grain seemed to tell a story, and he suddenly felt responsible for something bigger than he'd imagined. At home, the changes reflected in the smallest gestures. He washed dishes he had let pile up for days, opened the window to let sunlight in, made his bed. Tiny, seemingly trivial actions, yet they made an enormous internal noise for someone who had spent months without purpose. Linda noticed. "You're different, Ethan." She didn't know if it was praise or worry. "I'm just trying to sleep better, I guess." He partially lied. The truth was, for the first time in years, he felt alive. Visits to Mr. Grant became routine. Ethan came for curiosity, stayed out of fascination. The old man never gave easy answers. Every conversation was a lesson in patience and attention, full of long pauses that carried more meaning than any spoken word. "Why so many books?" Ethan asked on a cold afternoon. "Because they're the only ones who owe me nothing," Grant replied, pouring steaming coffee. "Everything I gave them, they returned in wisdom." Ethan smiled.
Does wisdom pay the bills? No, Grant smiled firmly, but it stops you from selling your soul trying. Some afternoons, Ethan simply sat watching the hourglass. The sound of the sand, tick-tock, tick-tock, seemed to sync with his own breathing, slowing racing thoughts, bringing calm and discomfort simultaneously. He started writing, too. First, scattered thoughts, then small goals. Every objective brought a new urgency, a need to move, even in tiny steps. Neighbors noticed the difference. Ethan was no longer the invisible kid, always on his phone. He walked the streets, ran a few blocks before sunrise, greeted people he knew. Small interactions, but full of presence. Friends mocked him. "Hey, Mr. Productivity!" they laughed online. Ethan just smiled, unbothered. Each laugh was a silent test of his determination. Sooner or later, he knew, they would see that time waits for no one. One day during a visit, Ethan noticed a thick, worn notebook on the table. The title, handwritten, "The Value of Minutes." Curious, he flipped through it and saw notes on philosophy, dates, names, crossed-out phrases. One sentence repeated itself. "We lose life in the gap between intention and action." "You wrote this?" he asked. "I lived it, paid dearly to understanding too late." Grant smiled, melancholic. "Time doesn't punish, it just keeps moving. We're the ones begging for a second chance." Ethan returned home that day with a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Discomfort at his own inertia, a silent tension between who he was and who he could be. In the following days, he woke even earlier, ran through the neighborhood before sunrise, feeling his breath mix with the morning cold, bought coffee for his mother unprompted, tidied the room before she awoke, read old texts, even without fully understanding them. Each gesture was small, but cumulative, like grains of sand building mountains. Ethan started seeing people differently. Every movement in the neighborhood seemed part of a larger flow, and he was just a piece that could move or stay still. The world didn't wait for him, but he could finally choose to keep up. One afternoon, arranging books on Grant's shelf, Ethan noticed an old photograph. A man smiled, his father, alive in the image. Ethan touched the glass, feeling absence mingled with a new sensation, the urgency to not repeat past mistakes. The hourglass remained, silent and firm. Each falling grain seemed to whisper, "The time is now." Ethan didn't fully understand what it meant, but for the first time, he felt that maybe he was finally the one who needed to act. That week, Ethan found the strength for small revolutions, cooking dinner for his mother, studying, organizing his schedule, writing goals that went beyond "I'll start tomorrow." Every step, however small, seemed to shift the weight of the world on his shoulders. At night, he would look at the window of Grant's house. The hourglass still gleamed in the distance, marking every moment, every choice, every opportunity Ethan had yet to waste. The old man's silence remained, but it was no longer empty. It was full of possibilities. And in that instant, Ethan felt something rare and powerful, hope mixed with fear and determination. The journey was just beginning, and he finally understood that time could not be ignored.
The sky over Silver Creek was heavy that morning, thick with gray clouds promising rain. Ethan woke before the sun, as he had been doing for days. But something felt different. A deep silence hung over the street, as if the world were holding its breath. Even the wind seemed still. He looked out the window at Mr. Grant's house. The lamp that usually lit the hourglass wasn't on. No movement, no clock ticking, no smell of coffee. Just silence. A gnawing sense of unease settled in his chest. Something was wrong. He laced up his sneakers, grabbed his jacket, and crossed the sidewalk in quick, silent, almost hesitant steps. Inside, the air was cold, lacking the comforting warmth of previous visits. The familiar aroma was gone. Ethan called out, "Mr. Grant, are you home?" Only emptiness answered. He climbed the hallway steps and found the old man lying in the guest room, pale and struggling to breathe. The sight of such frailty hit Ethan hard. "Mr. Grant," Ethan ran to him, grasping his wrinkled hand. "What happened?" The old man raised a finger, a weak, sad smile illuminating his worn face. "My time has come, boy, but not yours. You still have time. Use it." The weight of the world crashed down on Ethan all at once. All the inertia, all the wasted mornings, everything converged in that moment. I don't know if I can," he stammered. "Yes, you can," Grant said. "But you must choose. Choose to wake up for real. Choose to stop staring at nothing and pretending it's rest." Ethan sat beside the bed, observing the lines carved by time, the eyes full of experience, and the hourglass on the table, its golden light reflecting on the wall. Every falling grain felt like a memory of all he had squandered. In that instant, Ethan realized something he had never grasped so clearly. Time waits for no one. Never has, never will. In the days that followed, Ethan's routine changed drastically, but quietly. He woke before dawn, wrote goals, ran through the wet streets, washed dishes, tidied his room. Each action, though simple, carried immense symbolic weight. He was beginning to rebuild his own life. Friends still mocked him, calling him Mr. Productivity, but Ethan ignored it. Their laughter no longer held power over his conscience. Each grain of sand in the hourglass was now a vivid reminder of what could be lost. One afternoon, while reorganizing books at Grant's house, Ethan found a thick notebook titled "The Value of Minutes." Flipping through it, he saw dates, philosophical notes, and crossed out lines. One sentence stood out, etched with insistence. "We lose life in the gap between intention and action." "You wrote this?" he asked. "I lived it, paid dearly for understanding too late." Grant smiled, melancholy. "Time doesn't punish, it just keeps moving. We're the ones begging for a second chance." That night, Ethan returned home with the notebook, feeling something rare. Fear mixed with hope. Fear of staying in the same place. Hope of finally starting to live. The shock deepened when he received a letter from Grant, delivered by a neighbor. The old man's shaky handwriting carried weight. "Time cannot be borrowed. It only moves forward. Don't waste another minute, Ethan." Reading it again and again, Ethan realized the turning point wasn't Grant's illness, nor the hourglass, nor the rain or wind. The turning point was him, the choice he had to make. That week, he began making tangible changes. Waking early, writing goals, studying, running, making coffee for his mother. Small, silent revolutions shaping his character. Each act seemed to carve a new path, a new identity still forming. Ethan began noticing details he had previously missed. Sunlight through the trees, the smell of wet earth after rain, neighbors' morning routines. Everything felt part of a larger flow he was finally learning to perceive. One afternoon, watching the hourglass from a distance,
Nostalgia and regret mingled inside him. He remembered his father, Daniel Cole, smiling in an old photograph. Touching the glass, he felt the absence, but also the lesson unlearned. Never postpone life. Never let time slip away. Even absent, the old man continued influencing Ethan's every move. The true lesson wasn't in the hourglass or Grant's words, but in the conscious choice to act, feel, and live. At night, lying down, he looked at the dark sky and felt a strange peace mixed with urgency. The gentle rain whispered a reminder: every second counts, every choice matters, every grain of lost time is gone forever. Ethan was ready for something greater. Not out of fear, but understanding. Not out of obligation, but a desire to waste no more time. The turning point wasn't Grant's illness or the hourglass's warning. It was the awareness that life demanded real action, silent courage, and determination, and that from this moment on, he could never return to who he was.
The day dawned gray and quiet, as if Silver Creek itself were waiting for what was about to happen. Ethan woke early, as usual, but this time not from curiosity or habit. He felt an urgency deep in his bones, heavy and real. Grant's absence still weighed on him, and every grain of sand in the hourglass seemed to scream, reminding him of wasted time. He walked to the old man's house, not as a curious visitor, but as someone determined to act. The door was ajar. He stepped carefully, each footfall echoing on the wooden floor. The hourglass remained on the table, still like a silent monument. Ethan sat, took a deep breath, and touched the cold glass. "I have to do something," he murmured. It wasn't just about him. It was about everything Grant had represented. The discipline, the attention to detail, the silent urgency of every moment. It was about the life he was about to reclaim. That morning, Ethan decided to confront his greatest fears. First, school. He had always avoided it, excusing his laziness with, "It's not the right time." But today, every excuse felt fragile against the hourglass's weight and Grant's letter. He walked the hallways, feeling classmates' mocking stares, but he didn't care. He sat in the front row, opened his notebooks, and studied like never before. Every page turned was a brick in his personal reconstruction. Next, he faced what he had avoided for years: abandoned projects, hobbies, a life at a standstill. He went to his father's garage, found the old guitar, the toolbox he never learned to use properly, notebooks with unfinished drawings. With trembling hands, he strummed simple chords, repaired small objects, completed sketches. Every movement freed him from an invisible chain that had held him in inertia. The real test came that afternoon when he got a call from the hospital. Grant was worse. The news hit him like a silent punch. He grabbed the car keys, drove through wet streets, feeling the wind slap his face. Every second seemed to stretch and compress at once. He arrived at the old man's room and found Grant on oxygen, eyes fixed on him, still smiling faintly. "Ethan, you're moving." The old man's voice was low, carrying approval. "Now I can go." Ethan grasped Grant's hand, feeling the remaining warmth, the strength the old man conveyed without words. I will, sir. I won't waste any more time." "It's time for you to live, Ethan." Grant squeezed his hand and closed his eyes. A final breath that seemed to carry all of life's lessons. The impact was devastating, but enlightening. Ethan felt a mix of pain and clarity. The man who had inspired him for weeks was gone, and with him, the responsibility was now entirely his.
He could no longer delay, procrastinate, or watch his life as a spectator. In the following days, Ethan became a whirlwind of action. Mornings dedicated to study, exercise, and planning. Goals that had once seemed impossible were rewritten. He volunteered in the community, helping elderly neighbors, children, and those who, like him, had forgotten the value of every minute. Each small act was intentional, conscious, as if every grain of sand falling in the hourglass witnessed his transformation. At home, the change was obvious. His mother, Linda, noticed not just his actions, but his posture, alert gaze, and silent discipline. "I hardly recognize you, Ethan," she said one night at dinner. "It's not that I am someone else," he replied. "I just finally understand what it means to truly live." The ultimate test came when the school announced a community leadership project. Ethan, who had always avoided responsibility, volunteered to lead. He organized meetings, planned activities, motivated peers, resolved conflicts, and faced criticism. Each obstacle reflected the past, and he met it with courage and patience. With each challenge, he grew more aware of the value of time and life. One afternoon, walking through the neighborhood after another meeting, he paused in front of Grant's empty house. The hourglass's light reflected in the windows. No grains fell now, but Ethan felt the old man's presence in every gesture, every decision he made. Grant hadn't left just teachings. He had left a living legacy pulsing through Ethan's actions. At home, he sat at his desk, gazing at the hourglass he had kept since his first visit. The golden light reflected on his now serious, conscious face. He finally grasped the maxim the old man had repeated: "We lose life in the gap between intention and action." That night, Ethan wrote in his journal, "Today I chose to live. Every moment counts. Every choice matters. And I finally understand that life waits for no one." The climax of his transformation wasn't fireworks or dramatic events. It was made of silent choices, conscious decisions, daily courage. Each step, each gesture, every minute valued, built a new Ethan, someone able to face fears, take responsibility, and live fully. Ethan realized the climax wasn't external. It was internal, silent, but devastating in intensity. He had finally become the protagonist of his own story, no longer captive to time, laziness, or loss. Every grain of sand that fell now had meaning. Every second was opportunity. And as night deepened, Ethan felt something rare: peace with pain, clarity in urgency, strength in vulnerability. The man that he had become finally recognized the value of every moment, and the empty hourglass seemed to smile, witnessing not the end, but the beginning of a life truly lived.
The sun rose slowly over Silver Creek that autumn morning, painting the trees in shades of gold and orange. Ethan Cole walked the quiet streets, now attuned to the rhythm of the town and his own internal pace. The transformation that began months ago was no longer just visible, it was tangible. Every step, every breath carried the weight of conscious choices, a life finally claimed by him. At the breakfast table, his mother watched him with bright, proud eyes. "Good morning, Ethan. Did you sleep well?" she asked, trying to hold back emotion. "I did," he smiled, genuine and real. "I think I'm finally learning to sleep in peace." The old wall clock read 6:30 a.m., its almost poetic tick, a reminder that time waits for no one. Ethan looked at the hourglass he still kept in his room, now half empty, a silent witness to months of transformation. It didn't just mark time, it symbolized choices, discipline, courage, and action. In the following months, Ethan became a constant presence in the community. He led small youth study groups, mentored classmates, helped elderly neighbors and children, sharing not only knowledge but attention and care.
Things wasted time could never return. One afternoon at the local library, he noticed a young girl, lost and distracted, consumed by screens and social media, oblivious to the world around her. Ethan sat beside her, pulled up a chair, and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about what you're doing with your time?" The girl looked at him, speechless. He smiled. "It doesn't matter what you've lost. What matters is what you do from now on." It was the same advice Grant had given him. But this time, Ethan wasn't just speaking words. He was conveying experience, authenticity, example. He had become a mentor, not from pride, but understanding. At home, his habits were deeply ingrained. He woke before dawn, made coffee, studied, wrote goals, helped his mother with small tasks. Each act felt like a silent prayer, a commitment to never waste another minute. Looking at his father's photograph one evening, Ethan realized he was no longer living in absence, but in presence. Grief had transformed into motivation, loss had become a catalyst, and inertia had been replaced with action. The town noticed the change too. The once invisible boy was now someone people turned to for help, guidance, or just a friendly word. Ethan Cole was no longer defined by laziness, fear, or inaction. He had discovered the profound truth hidden in every second of life. Intention without action is meaningless, and time, once lost, is gone forever. On the final evening of autumn, Ethan returned to the porch of Grant's old house. The moving truck had left weeks ago, but the hourglass remained, its golden sand catching the last rays of sun. Ethan touched it gently. "Thank you," he whispered, not to the object, but to the man who had changed his life. The wind rustled through the trees. The hourglass's light faded, and Ethan felt peace. He had grown, learned, and acted. He had discovered the power of choice, the responsibility of time, and the depth of life itself. As he walked home, the horizon glowing, he knew one truth above all. The journey never ends, but every moment is a new beginning. And for the first time, he embraced it fully, ready to live every second with courage, purpose, and awareness. Ethan Cole had finally learned the value of time, and with it, the power to truly live.